Okay, very good. Okay. Okay. All right. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the July 2021 monthly meeting of Climate Action Brookline. We're going to get right to things because we have a very busy agenda tonight. The two largest sources of greenhouse gases in Massachusetts are transportation at 42% of greenhouse gases and buildings, and I'm sure our speakers tonight will have impact numbers on that. We'll deal with transportation in future meetings, but tonight, buildings, and in particular, our homes. The emphasis recently is on weaning our homes off of fossil fuels completely, hopefully, toward high efficiency and renewable electricity. And tonight's speakers have made very impressive choices in that direction. Our speakers tonight will tell us what they had to consider to determine the best systems for their needs, what specific design decisions they had to make, how much time the renovations took, roughly how much the systems cost, the impact on their utility bills, et cetera, et cetera. As we will learn, everyone's house is unique, so personalized solutions are necessary. So we're going to hear from 4 of our forward-thinking neighbors. Tommy Vitolo and Diane Sokol have prepared very impressive presentations, including possible tours of their houses. When I invited them, they both immediately launched into energetic and well-informed explanations of their systems. So I knew I'd ask the right people. But I asked them to hold on, save it until we could all hear about it tonight. Tommy is going to go first, and then Diane. Then David Clafter and Bob Miller will tell us something about what makes their houses unique or to cover things the others haven't mentioned. And then we will go to questions and answers. You can ask your questions live. And to be fair to everybody, we'll use the blue hand to determine the order of the questions. And hopefully folks have had experience with the blue hand. What you do is you go up to Judy, I thought you already joined, and here comes Werner. Okay. So Susan, when I make you the host, you will check the blue hands, right? So, but just for the explanation right now, go to the participants list and click on yourself, and you should see a blue hand option. Okay. And the reason I want to do that, number one, we may get more than 25 people. So the host won't be able to see everybody. Number two, sometimes it's hard to see folks. Bad lighting or your face moves around or stuff like that. So we just want to be fair to everybody in letting you ask your questions. So, okay, with that first, I'm gonna make Susan the host. Let me get back to that. And the reason we're doing that is that I am not at home, and just to be sure we have a reliable system. Susan, you are now the host.
Okay, that's great.
Very good. Okay, so why don't we begin with Mr. Tommy Vitolo, state representative from our district in Massachusetts. So Tommy, welcome.
Hello, everyone. I know many folks on this call. It's great to see you. And for those who we haven't met yet, I look forward to meeting soon. And I'm going to tell you about my home and my home's transition from a gas-fired forced hot water radiator heating system and no air conditioning to a whole house air source heat pump with both heating and, this time of year occasionally, air conditioning. And I will remind everyone that for new construction, this is actually really simple. And the architects and the mechanical engineers and those folks, it's straightforward. But for retrofitting, every home is different. Everyone's needs are different. And so what I did may or may not be particularly relevant to what you might do. My hope is that hearing my story helps broaden your thoughts on what the possibilities are, helps you ask more questions, helps you consider more ideas and find something that's right for you. And I think in many ways, the most important thing is to figure out what exactly it is you are trying to achieve. In the case of my wife and I, we were building, we weren't doing the work, we were having an addition built on our home, and we felt like that was a great time to do this because we were going to have a full-scale contractor on site. We were going to have the dust and debris anyway. And because we were adding square footage, the existing heating system probably didn't have the muscle to heat the house once expanded anyway. And so our initial plan, my initial plan was, well, we could add, heat pumps upstairs, because in the bedrooms, that's nicer for the air conditioning, but keep the radiators downstairs and have like a split system until the furnace, which was only like 5 years old, finally fell apart 15 or 20 years from now, because it seems wasteful to throw out a perfectly reasonably new gas furnace. And my wife went along with that. Now, my wife does construction for a living, so she kind of nodded for a while until the construction started. And I really came to appreciate the amount of dust and debris that a major home renovation includes. And it was at that point that she said, now, are you sure you want to invite them back in 10 years to finish the job? Or do you want to just go ahead and do the whole thing right now? She knows me well enough to know I needed to see the disaster I was creating before I was ready to listen to an even better idea in this case. And so I did. And we decided to remove all the radiators and have them recycled and do the whole house at once. And in some ways, that meant throwing out something that still worked. But on the other hand, it meant we don't have to go through this process half now, half later. And I would sooner buy a new house than I would go through another major home renovation or expansion in my life. It's really challenging for a guy like me. So our house is relatively easy for this because it's 2 stories, one exactly on top of the other, with an unfinished basement and an unfinished attic. And what that meant is that rather than using the mini splits that others I'm sure will show you later, we were able to use ductwork. And I'm going to show you how that works. I'm going to try to do that by switching over to another device so we can go on a little tour. This is like at the edge of my abilities here. So let's see what happens. Bear with me. The meeting host has to let me in. See that?
Yep.
Here we go. Now
Recording in progress.
Did you lose him?
Good question.
Yes, yes, he's coming back. You're,
Yeah, here we go.
I was hoping to use an iPad to walk around the house, but it didn't work as well as I'd hoped. So we're going to use the laptop. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
yes.
Great. So that is one of the vents that we create of size. You'll forgive my house. I make no apologies for having any messes with 2 working parents and 2 kids. In the kitchen, I think you can see this, right? And these are just look exactly the same as if you had any sort of forced air heating and cooling system. And that's because that's exactly what they are. And I'll give you one more while I get my flip-flops on. In the mudroom, you see they come in other colors, right? And they're really boring. There's nothing exciting about just showed you, right? It's just a vent. And the vent pushes hot and cold air, just like it does with any other heating system. The only difference is that hot and cold air is made hot and cold by a heat pump. So now we're going to go downstairs and I'm going to show you how that hot and cold air heated by the heat pump gets pushed around the house. So in the basement, you can see this guy. This is an air handling unit. The air handling unit doesn't actually care how these things in these white pipes, the liquid that carries the warm or the cool fluid gets there. All this air handler does is push air around, and you can see the silver ducts in the basement these are all just going to different spots in the floor throughout the ground floor, and they are bringing cool air or warm air, depending on the time of year, to that floor. And this big one right here, this is the return air. If you're going to push air into the house, you also need to bring air from the house back into the air handling unit, and that's what this one does. And so that's how the warm air or the cool air gets pushed around the house through the ducts into the conditioned space. It's also how the air returns back to the air handling unit. Now we're going to try something. I don't know if it's going to work or not. We're going to try to go outside and see if the Wi-Fi the actual heat and they're on the ground. But
Tommy, your voice is getting very spotty.
we put them under the porch. We were able to do that because our porch is exceptionally high off. So this is our house, and this is our porch with a cutout that we created for the heat pumps. And I'm going to try to sneak in. There's two, and you can see one in the foreground and one in the background there. The one in the foreground's a little bit bigger, and that's because it supplies what is essentially a mother-in-law apartment in our basement. And so it needed to be a little bigger because it supplies a little more heating and cooling. But these two heat pumps, each one operates one floor. And what that meant is that we could have zones, right? And so the first floor is on a zone, and the second floor is on a zone. And that means that we're saving wear and
This is a live experiment, ladies and gentlemen.
we did the whole does, and we didn't use splits. Instead, we used these vents and the ducts, and we did that frankly because we didn't want the ducts, the mini splits in the rooms of our house. We could do it with ducts, and that meant that it had a smaller footprint. It was a little less intrusive aesthetically. But the mini splits are fine. If you think about it, radiators are sort of absurd. They're really intrusive in each room. Imagine 100 years ago, someone, it was crazy. And now we sort of look at them and are used to them. I think mini splits can be the same way. But for us, this was a system that worked for us. Someone asked about cost estimates. I can't give you one. And I can't give you one because it was part of a multi-$100,000 construction project that involved digging a foundation and building rooms. And so I can't pull out that cost. In terms of operating, at this point, our operating costs in a cold winter are a little higher. Our home is not especially well insulated. We're not interested in replacing our 100-year-old single pane windows. We have storms, but newer windows would certainly help there. On what we can here and there, but we have more to do on that front. On the other hand, it's my view that electricity prices will be flat and gas prices are going to go up over time. And so I think that will flip in 5 or 10 years. It's hard to say exactly when, but we also have 100% green electricity, which means, we have no emissions associated with our heating. Our electric bill obviously went up. Our gas bill obviously went way down. I think in total, probably our electric bill went up a little more than our gas bill went down, but it's not substantial. It was certainly something we felt really comfortable with. And I would add that I delight in the air conditioning a little bit when I try to go to bed in the summer. That's something we didn't have before. One thing that is a slight negative, but radiators are often placed under windows, and they're put there because the radiator bakes off the condensation on the windows in the wintertime. And so we get a little bit of condensation where we didn't before. It's not dramatic. It's not anything that, makes us rethink what we did. But if you have a particularly leaky window, you may find quite a bit of condensation in there if you remove that radiator that was right underneath that window. And so that's sort of an opportunity to think about getting tighter windows, either repairing or replacing, whatever works for you. That's really the system. It's pretty simple once it's installed, working with the contractor to figure out exactly what you want and don't want, and thinking through every room. Takes a little bit of time, but you do it once and you have it forever. And so it's worth that little bit of time to do, I think. Any questions or questions later?
Yeah, let's do questions afterwards. So Diane Sokol.
Sorry, I had to raise my desk, unmute, share my screen, and put this into presentation mode. Come on. And one last step. Okay, so now you're seeing just one slide?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. So for those who don't know me, I work mainly with Mothers Out Front and Brookline, but also enjoy working with Climate Action Brookline folk on green electricity, and climate is everybody's business. And I agree with everything that Tommy said. In fact, it was a visit to Tommy's house that convinced us of our path forward for our heat pump project. And I'm actually going to talk, I have a lot of stuff to cover. I'm going to talk about a lot of the background info. And so hopefully I won't be too lengthy, but Tommy's project is interesting because there are really two planning pathways to home decarbonization. One is what Tommy did, tackle the whole project all at once. And the other path is the incremental approach. And that's what I'm going to be speaking about. And in case you haven't heard it, Freakonomics Radio has this great podcast in praise of incrementalism. You know, a lot of people think that we need revolution, we need to make massive system change, but I found this inspiring to know that you can make big changes by taking little steps one at a time. One other preamble here is I won't really be addressing costs because every project is different. And, you know, I have here something from Newton's Energy Coach website where they start talking about different costs, but I think all of these are low balls. You know, it really depends on how big your house is, what the conditions are. You know, our project was a lot like Tommy's, that we were doing a lot of work. It wasn't just the heat pump work. So it's hard to know what the cost is. The other thing is incentives. When we started our project, we were going to get about $10,000 of incentives. All of that dried up. You may have seen the article in the Globe this weekend about the Mass Save program. And I think we all need to lobby with our state representatives to really get Mass Save better aligned with the Massachusetts climate goals to get those incentives to make this possible for everyone. So a little background on our house. It was built in 1894 as a single family house. In 1930, it was expanded in the back, converted into a two-family house. So there's an apartment on the first floor, and then we live on the second and third floor. The house was built with coal-fired heating. You know, when we renovate the house, we find little chunks of coal in the basement. At some point, it was turned into oil. When we bought it, it had an oil tank. In the early 1990s, we converted the heating to gas, and now we've started the process of converting it to electric. But I want to talk a little bit about the approach. I was very inspired by hearing a presentation at WBUR City Space on the City of Boston's decarbonization plan. And what they're doing in Boston is really what we need to do in Brookline. It's what we need to do in our own houses. You know, it's a huge problem to solve, how to get everything off of fossil fuels, but breaking it down into a series of concrete steps makes it possible. So City of Boston had a three-prong approach. First step, reducing energy demand. Second step, electrify every fuel source. Third step, use 100% electricity, and not necessarily in that order, just all three of those things need to be done. So reduce energy demand. Maybe you've seen Daria Mark's energy efficiency, energy conservation presentations. You've probably seen a lot of these things before, public transportation, biking. All of that helps reduce the energy demand. Second, electrify every fuel source. Again, how we cook, how we use our vehicles, how we heat our homes, all of that needs to get off of fossil fuels and onto electricity. And the third part is 100% renewable electricity. If you have a good roof to your house and can install solar panels, great. If not, there's the program, the municipal aggregation through Town of Brookline, brooklinegreen.com. So how did we start decarbonizing our home? I forgot to mention that I'm an architect and my husband's also an architect, so we're big in planning. So if we take off the front facade of our house, what we see behind that is the section of the house. There's an apartment on the first floor, the second and third floor are connected as another apartment. There's an unconditioned attic up above and a basement below. So again, following these three steps that I learned from the city of Boston, start by reducing energy demand. Start with the low-hanging fruit, LED bulbs. Went through the house, found every bulb, found its replacement, replaced dimmer switches, timer switches. Second step, Energy Star appliances. Whenever we needed to replace an appliance, we got Energy Star. Same things for computer equipment, Energy Star printer, Energy Star TV. And you may see a lot of dust on these photos. And I also think that part of energy conservation is not vacuuming too much. But other energy conservation, using step-back thermostats. And what we do in our house is we hang our laundry to dry. And I know that Daria was very much in favor of hanging laundry to dry too. So all of that together to reduce energy demand. But then in terms of the building, in 2020, we added insulation to the exterior wall through the Mass Save program because we're a two-family house. And because it was in COVID, we got 100% incentive from Mass Save. We paid $0. It was a lot of my time to make sure it was done right, but we didn't pay anything for it. So if you see in the section at the right, what I've shaded in red is the insulation that Mass Save did to help tighten up the building. And just like Tommy, we have 100-year-old windows that we are not going to replace. We love the wavy glass and how the sunlight comes through it, but we do plan on replacing our 30-year-old storm windows with new storm windows. So then as part of this big construction project this summer, we did more insulation. If you look at the diagram on the right, you see that we added insulation in the basement and connecting through those floor joists to the wall insulation. So first we actually had to cut this drainage ditch around our basement. We had a lot of water in our basement previously and nothing right now, even after 40 days of rain. So after the basement drainage, spray foam on that stone foundation wall. And you can see on the left here, that spray foam, not very aesthetic looking, but it's a basement and the one finished space in the basement, Randolph's workshop, we replaced the old wood paneling with new wood paneling. So always an option. If you have a basement that you use, you can always put finished material on top of the spray foam. So the last piece of insulation work, again, connecting all those red lines to make it as continuous as possible. We had attic and eave insulation done as part of our construction project this winter. Very technical work, not something that you should really trust Mass Save to do, but working with Big Meister construction company that focuses on energy retrofits, they really started crawling into all these spaces up underneath the roof to seal up and insulate. So then skipping over the electrifying the fuel sources, talking about the 100% renewable electricity, we were on a program called NSTAR Green. That was quite a while ago. NSTAR Green probably became Eversource Green, and then Mass Energy Consumers Alliance, and then the Brookline Green program. But then in 2019, we added solar panels to the roof of our house. A nice south-facing sloped roof. It has a bunch of dormers and chimneys that were a little bit difficult to get the panels around. But you can see an excerpt from my bill from last December, a year of running the solar panels. We pay $0 each month. And in fact, we've built up quite a nice credit on the Eversource bill. So a reason to start getting off of gas and onto electricity to use up some of this credit. So again, now comes the hard part, electrify every fuel source. So the phase 0, we reduced our demand, we insulated, we installed the PV panels. Now we have to plan to electrify everything. And as an architect, I plan. Plan is my middle name. The other middle name that I go by is procrastinator. The good thing about procrastinating is I didn't have to be an early adopter on any of this. I could get a lot of information from Tommy Vitolo, from other neighbors who had installed heat pumps. Same thing on the solar panels. So good thing I waited because I had somebody else figure out all the problems. So the first step in planning for the electrification was having our contractors, specifically the electrical contractor, look at our panel. Now we only have a 100 amp panel. Most new houses, I think, are built with 200 amp panels or maybe even more. We have a 100 amp panel. So the question was, will we be able to do this project? And originally our contractor was saying that we would need to spend, I don't know, $5,000, $10,000 to get Eversource to upgrade our service. But you know, I went through the house, took photos of every faceplate on the appliances. The electrician did a calculation. He said we were actually fine with our 100 amp panel to do everything we were doing on this project, plus have room for a future heat pump water heater. So glad that we saved some money on there. So again, to plan to electrify every fuel source, our house has 2 gas stoves, one for the first floor apartment, one for the second floor apartment. Those need to be switched. We have 2 gas clothes dryers on the 3rd floor for our apartment and in the basement for the first floor apartment. We have 2 gas boilers in the basement. It makes hot water for our radiators, just like Tommy's house. We have lots of radiators. There's a smaller unit for the first floor apartment, a larger unit that covers the 2 floors of our apartment. We have a single gas hot water heater for domestic hot water for the whole house. And we have 1 gas powered vehicle. So everything that you see there needs to be electrified. And in our project this winter, we took care of the clothes dryer on the 3rd floor. We took care of the stove on the 2nd floor. And we took care of half of that gas heating system for the upper unit because we only installed the heat pumps for the 3rd floor. So I can talk a little bit about the electric dryer and the induction stove before we get to the heat pumps. Electric dryer, I don't need to talk about because we hang our laundry maybe 3 or 4 times a year. We will use the electric dryer. But
by the way, Diane, let me just mention, we're doing fine on time. So
okay.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, I like talking.
Everything's good. Everything's good. Yeah.
So the electric dryer, we basically abandoned the gas pipe that was going from the basement up to the 2nd and 3rd floor. So it made sense to install the electric dryer on the 3rd floor in our laundry room. The induction stove, when I made that switch, a friend of mine asked, do you miss your gas stove? And my answer to her at that point was, that's not a valid question. It's not a question about whether I miss my gas stove. We need to stop using fossil fuels. So it was something I had to do. But now that I've used my induction stove for a few months, the answer to that question is I do not miss my gas stove at all. I love the induction stove. I had 2 very small grease fires with my gas stove. I can let grease spatter all over the place when I'm cooking, not a problem. Cleans up so easily. And if you have a cat like my cat Trisket, who loves going on counters, the induction stove is safer for people and safer for cats. So now the heat pumps. Every project is different. Tommy talked a little bit about his project. The specific goals that we had in our project was to improve the comfort in the 3rd floor bedrooms. it was really hot on the third floor. And during COVID, we had another friend living here with us. So we had two noisy window air conditioners working on the third floor. We wanted to make sure there was minimal impact on the existing house on the third floor layout. We didn't want to do a total renovation of the whole third floor or the whole house. And we wanted to make sure that we would be able to live on the second floor while this project was going on. So if you look at the side view of our house again, the challenges of the third floor, we have a beautiful south-facing roof, which is great for solar panels. It was not great for the temperature in those bedrooms on the third floor. Putting in all of this insulation, I'm sure, is helping that a lot. Also on the left side of the house here in the triangle, those are west-facing windows without any trees, because that's our parking area. The heat from the west windows just cooks in there in the afternoon. The third floor has limited cross ventilation. If you look at the windows on the first and second floor, you know, in the 1890s, they built these Queen Anne houses with a lot of windows and a lot of cross ventilation. But the third floor was the servants' rooms, really small windows for the size of the space. And the third floor also has a variety of room size, which made things challenging for the contractor, but not impossible. So very similar to Tommy's house, after we visited, we decided to go with a ducted system for our top floor. So we have an outdoor condenser, very similar to what you'd have with the wall-mounted mini splits. And on our third floor, we have a mechanical unit, similar to what Tommy was showing you in the basement. It got tucked into a little closet into the third floor. We duct up through the attic and just have ceiling grills. And I think this is different from Tommy. We have a separate system called an ERV, Energy Recovery Ventilator. Now everybody has different thermal comfort issues. For me, I don't mind being cold. I don't really love being hot, but I really need fresh air. I can't sleep in a hot, stuffy room. So having a system that was going to provide enough fresh air in an energy efficient way was important to us. So we have a separate system bringing in fresh air, warming it or cooling it from the air that's being exhausted. So the project involved two major moves, removing a chimney that was in the middle of the house. I forgot to show you that when I was looking at the solar panels. Remove the chimney and relocate a door. So over here on the left, this is where the chimney had been. You can see a plate on the floor and a hole in the ceiling. So by taking out that chimney, this is where the door had been. Sliding that door to the right, they made enough space between these two studs to put a closet for this piece of mechanical equipment. Other than that, no changes on our third floor. So here's what it looked like during construction. On the right is this piece of mechanical equipment in a closet with a return air grill underneath. And then this is that up into the ceiling where the chimney had been taken down, the energy recovery unit. And this week I have to do the quarterly changing and cleaning of the filters in that unit. So
sorry, Diane, what is AHU?
Oh, sorry, that's air handling unit. So similar to what Tommy has. So this is what it looks like when the construction's done. On the right, the air handling unit, you can see a rectangle on the wall. That's a removable panel that's actually not working right now, but the contractor will come back and fix that. And then on the left is a panel with some little hooks you can see above the door, little hand pulls to pull down that panel and change the filters. So all of that worked out very neatly, minimal impact on the third floor. So in addition to the AC, which has been great, and we haven't gone through a heating system yet, this whole project actually gave us a much better bedroom back here by improving the layout. And we got rid of these dusty radiators. Now I know they made great heat in the winter, but the paint was chipping, they were very dusty, things could get trapped behind. So I'm not sad to see them go. And you can see we just have little ceiling grills. That's all we have. So here are some images from the house renovation of the 3rd floor. Same ceiling grills in the bathroom, in all 3 bedrooms, and in our big bedroom. And there was a lot of testing and monitoring going on during construction. On the right is Jason doing a blower door test just to make sure that all the air sealing that they were doing was actually effective. I think in the middle, they were doing a pressure test on the duct. And on the left, Brendan is showing some wiring. I think this is part of the humidity sensor that they've temporarily put into our attic. Some of our insulation techniques were a little bit novel, and they just want to make sure that the moisture level in the insulation will be okay in the winter. So one lesson learned, we had a bit of a problem in the first heat wave this summer. I think that was back in June. One problem with this incremental approach, we have air conditioning on the 3rd floor, but we have no air conditioning on the 2nd floor. So at the stairway where the 2 floors come together, we had cool, dry air sinking from the 3rd floor and warm, humid air rising from the 2nd floor. And we started getting condensation on the ceiling grills, and then the condensation was dripping down. Luckily, there was a very easy solution to this. Contractor, after just checking to make sure that the system was operating okay, they moved the thermostat. It's all wireless, so we can just move it anywhere. Moved it into one of the bedrooms, and in the hottest days, in the hottest heat waves, we need to close all of the doors to the bedrooms. Usually we just keep open doors in the house, but if it means avoiding all this condensation by just closing the bedroom doors and letting the system work just for the 3rd floor, that's fine. And then once we eventually fix the 2nd floor, that will help. So, the next steps in electrification, what I'm calling phase 2, we can take care of the stove and the clothes dryer for the 1st floor apartment, and we can put in a heat pump water heater without doing any changes on the electrical panel. Phase 3 is going to be a little more complicated. That's needing an electrical service upgrade and then figuring out how we want to do the heat pumps on the 2nd floor. Tommy's house, easy to get ducts coming up to the 1st floor. Our house and Tommy's house, easy getting ducts to the 3rd, to the top floor. But this floor in the middle is a little more difficult, and we either have to put the heat pump units on the walls or on the floor. And I think, as Tommy said, radiators take up space and they look ugly. And so it's just sort of getting used to looking at the wall mounted mini split units. And also eventually we will need an electric vehicle and an electric vehicle charger. And we will probably leave the heat pumps for the 1st floor to a future owner, just so they can enjoy having a project to do also. And just want to make sure that everybody knows where there are resources available. The Mass CEC, that's the Mass Clean Energy Center. They used to have a lot of incentive programs. Those have sort of fizzled out. Hopefully they'll get boosted up again. Mass Save, similar, has incentives, and both of them also have information that you can look at. And hopefully we'll be seeing more incentives coming our way. The Heat Smart Alliance is a group of volunteers sort of associated with different cities and towns in Massachusetts that have these Heat Smart programs. And Newton, probably in the past year or so, started a Heat Smart program. So Newton has an energy coach. If you Google search for Newton Energy Coach, you can find their page and look around. And really the best network, I think, is all of your Brookline friends and neighbors. People have had experience, they've worked with contractors, they've have lessons learned. So that's where to look. And that's all that I have.
All right. Diane, thank you very much. Fantastic. Bob Miller.
Yep, I'm here. So I am both not at home and also don't have images or slide presentation, so I apologize for that. But I will share with you, my system is a bit different because I do have mini splits. And let me at least show you an example of what one of these looks like. They're pretty typical, and you've probably seen them around. Can people see that image?
Yes.
So this type, there's a unit like this that's mounted on the wall. And, you know, I would agree with what Tommy and Diane have said in terms of, you know, if you're used to radiators, the advantage that this has over radiators, first of all, it's not taking up floor space. Most people don't have something at this point on your wall or on your ceiling. So, you know, you do free up floor space, and also they're much easier to clean. Uh, you know, if there's dust on the top, you just wipe it off and that's it. Plus, you don't see it for the most part. As far as maintenance, every now and then, and I'm much less, um, uh, I don't plan the way Diane plans. Every now and then I'll think, oh, gee, I haven't cleaned the filter in the one in the kitchen. And there's a panel in the front. You just open it up, and I don't actually replace the filters. I just rinse them out and let them dry and then put them right back in. And that's worked just beautifully. And like I say, I probably, in a room that's getting a heavy use, you know, maybe do it a couple times, 2-3 times a year. Some of the rooms, we put our system in 2014. Our living room, which we're almost never in, I haven't ever cleaned the filter in there. I don't know, you know, it just doesn't run very much. And when we did this project in 2014, we put in 7 of these units. We put in 1 in each of our 4 bedrooms. We put in a larger unit in our living room, which is a large room. And then we put 1 in the dining room and 1 in the kitchen. And basically, we could probably just take care of our whole house with these. We generally don't try to, you know, either air condition or heat the entire house. We tend to, you know, my wife and I lived there until last September when our daughter and her son moved in. It was just the 2 of us. And generally speaking, we were mostly using the bedroom and the kitchen. And one advantage of these units is that each one has its own controller. And so if you know, and there's a remote control, it looks kind of like a television remote, and that comes with a little holder, and we just have it on the wall. And you can just pick up that controller and you can control each room separately. So if you have 1 in each bedroom, if, you know, my wife and I like having it warmer and my daughter and her husband like having it colder when they're sleeping at night, we can each control our own. So that's one advantage of the individual mini split units, is you control them individually. So most of the time that we've had these, we've been using, as I say, mostly in our bedroom and in the kitchen. We do sometimes use them somewhere else, but you know, those are the 2 rooms that have gotten the most use. What we've noticed is, and we use them for both heat and for air conditioning, and again, keeping in mind that these units now are 7 years old. So, you know, the technology, you know, we all know how quickly technology moves, and I'm sure that the new units are both more efficient and better in other ways. But what we noticed immediately was, prior to putting these in, we had window air conditioners in most of the rooms that I just mentioned. We didn't have a window air conditioner in our kitchen. We didn't have a window air conditioner in our dining room, but the bedrooms each had a window air conditioner, and the living room had a large window air conditioner. My wife did not like sleeping with the air conditioning on in the bedroom, because the noise bothered her. And so, much to my consternation, because like Diane, I do like it a little bit cooler, and I'm much more comfortable being cool and putting on a sweatshirt than I am being hot. but we rarely put it on unless it was really hot. And in what we noticed was, so when we put these in, they're really, really quiet. And my wife is actually, she now will want air conditioning before I do in the bedroom at night. And so we use it certainly a lot more than we used to use the window air conditioner. We also use the one in the kitchen quite a bit. And we never had an air conditioner in our kitchen. So we're getting a lot more air conditioning and we're using a lot less electricity. So the efficiency of these units compared to window units is tremendous. And so we're much more comfortable and we're using much less electricity than we used to use. Actually, I don't need to keep sharing this. The thing about doing it the way we did, a couple of things. One is that it didn't even dawn on us until we had done all of this, that in the morning when we go into our bathroom, it's kind of cold in the bathroom. We didn't put a wall unit into the bathroom. And we thought about whether we want to put either an electric heater into the bathroom or possibly put a vent, an opening from the bedroom into the bathroom, that either with or without a small fan that would, bring the air from the bedroom into the bathroom. But as we were trying to think about this, we got really used to the fact that it's really not a big deal. I mean, when we go in, first of all, it doesn't get that cold. And second of all, as soon as we've taken a shower, the bathroom's nice and toasty. So, we never have dealt with that issue. The other thing about it is that it's not, just like Tommy's experience, we do find that it is not as efficient on the heating end of things. And again, now keeping in mind, we have a seven-year-old systems. And we find that we do keep the house a fair amount colder than we would have using our gas system. Also, we do still have the gas system in place. We did not remove it and we did not remove the radiators. And what we do is, the gas system now basically is we keep it during the winter, we keep it at 55 degrees. And then we just turn on the heat pump units in the spaces that we're using. So, and that's worked out fine for us. There's no issues around pipes. There's no issues around any of that. For the 7 units that we have, there are 3 units outside. 3 of those, the units look like what Tommy showed you underneath his porch and what Diane showed a picture also of the outside unit. And it's pretty typical. We have 3 of those outside units serving 7 inside units. So, I think that the thing that the advantage of the mini split units where you've got the wall mounted, as Diane indicated, if you don't have an easy way to run vents, this is really easy. I mean, there's a small hole that they have to put a small pipe, really a hose that goes through the wall and then connects to the outside unit. But it's pretty innocuous. None of them are on the front of our house. They're either on the side or on the back, and you really wouldn't notice them. The other thing, as I said, it allows you for individual control of each room pretty easily. There was one other thing I was going to mention. Oh, also, if you want to try them out or you don't have the budget to do your whole house, you certainly could do a bedroom or a few bedrooms and say, well, I'm going to replace my window air conditioning units and save a lot of money on electricity and start out that way. So, if you're not ready to do your entire house, this is a way to to kind of do some of it and see how you like it. So I'm gonna leave it there. And Lisa asked me, are my air source heat pumps cold climate heat pumps? I don't even know. So that was not a question that came up when I put them in. I don't know whether that's something that sort of evolved over time, but I don't know. So Lisa says she's guessing not, and I would tend to think that that's probably true. They're probably not cold weather heat pumps.
All right, Bob, fantastic. Thank you very much. So now we'll go to Q&A, and let me just use host prerogative and ask the first question, which is, now Bob mentioned the possibility that because his units are 7 years old now, is that dinosaur years, and is there an advantage to waiting because units might improve in efficiency or any other reason, or have they maxed out on their efficiency, and is it not worth waiting from that?
Well,
Tommy, I'm sorry, somebody spoke. Bob and then Tommy, please.
Oh, yeah. So I'll jump in on that from my past career in computers. And people used to always ask me, oh, is this a good time to buy a computer, or should I wait because the technology is going to get better? And my answer was always, if you need a computer, you want a computer, don't wait because you'll wait forever. And I think the answer is pretty similar. There's lots of benefits right now today. And if you're waiting for technology, you can wait forever because there's always a new technology on the horizon. There's always going to be something better coming along.
I would agree with Bob, but I would emphasize that whereas the laws relating to computer improvement, amount to roughly doubling in power every 18 months. And so you have this sort of exponential growth in the power of a computer. But you can't have that because of other laws of physics with heat pumps. Yes, they will get slightly better over time, and maybe they'll get a couple of cool new features, although I don't know how many cool features you really want your heat pump to have. It's not like a fun toy, it's a heat pump. So yeah, they will get a little bit better. Yeah, the cost will come down a little bit over time, but we're only talking about a couple of % a year. We're not talking about computers that get really meaningfully better in a 3 or a 4 or 5 or a 7 year window. So I agree with Bob, but I just want to emphasize that, the future of heat pumps is not flying heat pumps, right? It's not this amazing high-tech future of heat pumps. They're just going to be a little bit better, and people like you and I aren't even going to know any better. They're just going to act, like heat pumps. So when it's right for you, go for it.
Thank you. Susan, are you seeing blue hands for questions on your screen as host?
Yes, I am. So Alan has his hand up.
Yeah, I was going to say the until they come up with a much different technology on the refrigerant, which is probably going to be quite a while in the US. The part that is going to improve on efficiency is the part that sits in your backyard, the compressor part. So if you, and the same with Tommy's under his porch, those are the compressors. So, if something really got better 5 years from now, 8 years from now, you could just replace those. It's a small fraction of the total price.
So Susan, who's your next blue hand?
So I don't see any more hands, but I did see a couple questions in the chat. So Tracy Burns is asking whether or not our presenters could, Tracy, you have your hand up, so go ahead. You're muted.
No, it's the same question. I just didn't realize you were monitoring the chat. Because I know my landlords used 128 electricians or 128 something. And I just was hoping the other three, Bob, Tommy, and Diane could mention who they used. So we know, just so I know who's out there.
So I actually have a whole list of heat pump contractors that I've been getting recommendations from a bunch of people. Our project, we worked with Big Meister because the former head of Big Meister was a college friend of mine no, friend of a friend. Anyway, using the network. So we were talking with Big Meister for about a year and a half before the project actually started. So we used their mechanical contractor, who was Lavalley Systems, and I loved them. I love them. So I would recommend them. And it depends on how much work you're doing. If you need a general contractor to deal with other finish work and electrical work and plumbing work, taking out radiators, you need a plumber. Some contractors or some mechanical contractors can do all of that, but you need to ask. But various people have recommended lots of different places, including Atlantic Heating right here on Cypress Street in Brookline. So, and 2 people on Walnut Street recently used Atlantic Heating, so we can get a little more feedback on that.
And Bob and Tommy, who did you 2 use?
So I actually don't even remember.
And our contractor doesn't warrant recommending using or recommending staying away from. So I recommend you check Diane's list.
Okay, thank you.
So Werner, you have your hand up?
Yes, thanks. I have not installed heat pumps, but I just thought I'd add to the conversation. Initially, I did have this sort of aesthetic concern about having the mini splits hanging up by the ceiling. And I think it's just worth noting that, first of all, I think whoever said it is right, that we're all used to radiators. So pretty soon you get used to something that's really even less in the way. But also they do make mini splits that sit on the floor very much the way the radiator does. So in some settings, you can also do that.
And there's even in specific settings, think like the top floor below an unfinished attic, there are mini splits cassettes that go into the ceiling. I don't find them particularly attractive. The ones I've seen for residential, they feel a lot more like conference room in an office. But there are some sort of recessed in the ceiling devices as well that you wouldn't put on the ground floor, but you would put on the floor that has an unfinished attic above it. So there are some other options as well.
Alan again?
Yeah, I put this in the chat just now, but if it's feasible, you really should air seal and insulate first, because that'll reduce the heat load and the cooling load, and you'll be able to put in smaller heat pumps, which are going to cost less money and use less electricity, especially the upfront cost could be lower.
And if I can add to that, what I've heard anecdotally is that some contractors tend to oversize systems because they don't want to be called back in the middle of the winter. It's not working well enough. So, systems get oversized and they don't work as efficiently when they're oversized. Plus, they probably cost more money being oversized. So, if you're going to do some of that work ahead of time to insulate and air seal, that is helpful for calculating into the capacity of the equipment.
And I would just jump on quickly. Many times we end up replacing our appliances in our home, including our heating and cooling systems, in an urgent basis because they broke. And they broke at a time that they were useful. Our heating systems don't break in July, they break in January. And our air conditioner breaks in July, not January, right? And so the problem is, if you wait for your heating system to fail to do this, you're going to have a really hard time pulling it off. Look, if your pipes freeze, you got big problems. You can't just say, well, we'll just, wear a sweater and let the house get down to 30 degrees. That will cause all sorts of other problems in your house, which means that if you're thinking about this transition, there's no better time than right now, tomorrow, to start the process of insulating and air sealing, right? Because it's the thing you want to do first, no matter what. Get going on it. Whether or not you replace your gas or your oil-fired system next week, next year, or in 2029, if you insulate and air seal, you will cut your carbon emissions and your bills for all systems. So it's worth doing that first anyway. And then once you do that, like breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, call Diane, see if the, what vendors you should use, and then, start the process so that you're not stuck in the situation of trying to decide, am I going to buy a brand new gas-fired or oil-fired furnace and feel really bad about myself, or let my pipes freeze and have my spouse feel really bad about me, right? Like neither of those is a good outcome. So this is the kind of thing you really want to be proactive about.
So, sorry, again, host prerogative. Picking up on what Diane and Bob have been saying, Bob apparently left in his gas system, I don't know, maybe house-wide or at least in some rooms, I don't know, but as a backup. And that is my question. If you don't exactly know what, maybe you've insulated already, maybe you haven't, but you don't exactly know what your heat pump capacity needs are, does it make sense to leave in your old fossil fuel system as a backup for at least a few years to see if you need it?
My instinct is, in general, no. Now, if you're doing a partial system, then you can't remove it because your partial system can't carry the whole home. So in a partial system, like, yeah, leave it in. And it might be that it literally costs you nothing to leave it in, right? Where, it's in the basement, you're going to keep gas service to the house anyway because you're using gas for other utilities, right? And it's sort of like, well, like there's no harm. But removing that system later, whether it's next week or 5 years from now, is going to require a plumber. It's going to require a contractor to get it out of your basement, right? You can't do that yourself. It's actually against the law for you to do it yourself. It's gas work. So if you have contractors on site now and a dumpster on site now, right, there actually is both a time and a headache and money saving to just removing it now and being done with it. So it might make sense to save it. But look, if you're not comfortable believing your HVAC technician is sizing this correctly, stop and find a different HVAC technician. You're crazy to let this person work in your house if you don't trust their judgment. If you do trust them, then why would you leave the gas system in if you designed the replacement system to not use gas? And one more thing quickly, people will often say, well, what if the power goes out? Almost every single oil and gas system uses electricity to operate. And if the power goes out, your gas or your oil system, both, it will not fire correctly, but also if you have forced air or forced water, the pumps and fans won't operate either. So pro tip, when the power goes out, your gas system, your oil system almost never heats your house. You still get cold. So don't worry about the power going out. Keeping a gas system generally doesn't help you there.
And you don't have to worry about the water in the boiler pipes freezing when the power goes out either. Yeah, I was going to say pretty much the same thing, John. If you're going to put one of these in, you want to get a good contractor. You want to get a good contractor, somebody who has the experience and the skills to do the calculations to determine how big the system has to be. I guess the way you do that is ask around other people who've done it. I can't give you any names specifically, but it's the same as if you put central air in a house. If they're doing it properly, somebody needs to size the system and put it in an appropriate system. No different.
So Mary, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you all so much. I had a question about actual air quality of a heat pump system. I found that the air is really satisfying to live in compared to a radiator system that is minimally heating the room and not really giving you a full sense of the enjoyment of air. And I wondered if you all could comment on that. And then I just also know that with a vent system, you can have a remote control app on your phone and you can read it when you go away for 3 days. You can read what's happening. I mean, sometimes the connection isn't always so great. You're not always picking up an accurate reading, but you at least know when you're away that you can observe and find out what your system is doing. And I don't think that's true with a wall heat pump, because that's like something in each room. And as Bob said, you have to turn it on and off. And I just wondered about your comments about those two questions.
So on the first one, we often think about temperature. It's something we understand, right? 68, 72, something like that. The HVAC nerds will talk about things like wet bulb and dry bulb, and it relates to humidity. And we all know that humidity has a very significant impact on what the temperature feels like and the comfort of the room. But traditional heating systems don't do anything about humidity, right? I mean, it's just not part of the program, right? Air conditioning systems do. Air conditioning systems take humidity out of the air. And sometimes we use a humidifier or a dehumidifier, depending on our circumstance, like a little toaster appliance or something a little bigger than that. Radiators tend to dry the room, right? The air is a little drier. Some people like that, some people don't. As I mentioned earlier, it can help with condensation on the inside of single pane windows. But some people find it more or less comfortable. So it's the kind of thing that when you're talking with your systems designer, talk about humidity. That the designer may be thinking about it already and sort of making decisions for you. Bring it up. Ask the questions. What does this do for me in terms of humidity in the winter and the summer? How does that matter? How does that affect things? Because it certainly does, and it's worth a conversation. I will tell you, in my home, I have not noticed a meaningful difference in the air. And what that probably tells me is my house is too leaky and I'm just breathing too much outside air even when the windows are closed. But I'm not sure. So everybody's experience is a little different. I'd be curious to hear from Diane and from Bob about it as well.
So our systems just went online, I guess, in April or probably May this year. So we've been through cooling season, have not been through heating season. But cooling system, incredibly quiet, especially compared to the old window air conditioning units. I have to put my ear next to the access panel in the hallway to see if it's actually running or not, to listen for that hum of the refrigerant pumping. Very quiet, very gentle. You don't feel like you're being blasted, because I think with the heat pump, it brings the temperature up to a constant level and just works gently to keep it at that level. It's just maintaining it. So I hope that our experience in the winter will be the same. I just want to comment back on the question about maintaining your gas heating system. I totally agree with what Tommy was saying. If you don't trust your engineer or your installer, then maybe it's time to get a new one. But I had one friend who told me that her Mass Save contractor said that she needed to keep her gas heating system by code. It's like, no, there is no code requirement that you need this backup system. And there was something on the Mass Save website that I couldn't find again. Maybe they took it down, but Mass Save on their heat pump page was recommending that heat pumps never be used as the sole source for heating in a house. Again, if it's designed correctly, it can be the sole source, especially if you have done the work of insulating your house. And
can I just add quickly,
Yeah.
If you think removing a radiator gives you some space, wait till you remove the furnace in the basement. All wow, our basement's big again. And so, it's all of these little things. And also, if you don't have any gas at all anymore because of this, you're also saving $100 a year in like the annual fee for the monthly fee for being a gas customer, right? So like that's value too, and they all sort of add up together.
Yeah, and I would say, again, my situation a little different because we didn't replace our system, and by design, we didn't, it doesn't cover the whole house, even though it covers most of the rooms. but we didn't notice any difference in the quality of the air in terms of humidity or, dryness. Now, keeping in mind that, we also do have, the gas system does come on to maintain 55 degrees in the house as a whole. So, yeah.
So
Susan, yeah.
I don't see other hands up, and Mary, you still have your hand up. Did you want to continue? Or I don't see other hands, John.
And Susan, how about questions that might have come through the chat?
Well, there's been a lot of back and forth on this, but I think most of the questions have been answered that were in the chat.
Okay. All right. David Clafter was going to be one of our speakers tonight. He was traveling, he's dealing with family, whatever, and may have ways. Just catch him next time. So, gee, this has been fantastic, actually. Does anyone have any final, I guess, questions, comments, concerns? All right. I am assuming that all of our speakers tonight are very willing to be available to anybody and everybody and anybody at any time with follow-up questions and advice, etc. So
You can send an email at any time. You may not get a response at any time. You may have to wait.
fair enough. Fair enough. All right. This has been a fantastic meeting, very informative, very inspirational. And I think we are in my house, we may try to get to work on that. It's a family negotiation, of course. So we'll see how that goes. So, and also my inclination at this point is to do this kind of talk regularly as more of us make moves on their own houses, right? And to tell us about folks' more recent experiences with this. So, so it looks,
I would say that, like, I thought this was great, and I loved hearing about the different experiences. And I know it's easy to sort of think about like electric cars, right? That's an easy one, or micro mobility even. But I actually think the one that's the hardest for homeowners to embark on is air sealing and insulation. I think it's just every home is so different, and different contractors will have different strategies. Do you do the hips, or do you do the floor of the attic, and all these other questions? And there's different materials you can use with different trade-offs. And I felt very comfortable talking with the contractor about the heat pumps and thinking that through. I still don't feel comfortable thinking about insulating and air sealing my house. I just find it really challenging, right? You don't want to make it too tight, but you don't want to make it too loose, and you have to have cross venting, and it's actually really complicated in a way that I think like a heat pump system is not especially complicated. And so I would also, it's like the first thing you should do, right? It's the first thing on the list after you do the LED bulbs and the things you can control inside the house easily. You get to that heating, that air sealing and insulating. So I would encourage you to try to find a variety of different speakers who can talk about that. I think it's the hardest part. I think it's the thing you really ought to do first from a hire someone to do the work perspective. And so it seems like it's a real opportunity for people to learn a little more and get comfortable with it a little bit, and then go bring in somebody who knows what they're doing to really get started. That's my 2 cents.
Tommy,
and I'm going to call Diane next week and see if I can find out who she used, and think like, I want to double back and make sure that we did all that well, because I'm not so sure that we did.
Bob?
Yeah. And I just want to close out by saying that I absolutely agree with Diane and Tommy. And if you're thinking about replacing your system, absolutely. But I also want to say that sometimes if you're not ready to go whole hog, I would, a window air conditioner is unbelievably inefficient. And even if you just are going to put in a couple of them in some bedrooms, like, you know, the mess is minimal if you're doing mini splits because they're not knocking down walls. They're going to put a small hole in a wall. It's mostly outdoor work. It's quick. It's easy. It's not messy. So if you're not ready to go for the whole thing, you know, get rid of the window air conditioner in your bedroom and, you know, see how happy you'll be.
All right. You know, let me just say, Tommy, your insulation idea. We did in March, Mass Save came through. They were at our house for 3 or 4 days. They did we got a great crew. They did a phenomenal job. We've noticed an instant improvement in heat remaining in the house when it was cold outside, and also in our house staying fairly cool, and we don't have AC. Just very briefly to let everybody know, what happened is that when we had a single hot day and then a very cool night, we worked out a pretty complicated fan system to draw air through the house, night air through the house. It worked fine as long as it was a single hot day and then a cool night. It has not worked you know, with multiple hot days and when it didn't get very cold that night. So we're definitely looking for something new. But anyway, I do want to, that is a testimonial to a quality crew through Mass Save. So, and it just seems to me also in terms of speakers on the Mass Save issue, number one, they would be good people to involve. Number two, Mass Save this year is in a major kind of rethinking of what they are going to offer incentives for. And there have been stories in the Globe, as Diane mentioned, and there's a lot of controversy amongst certain people dealing with green matters about that in the state. So we may want to involve ourselves in that conversation as well. So, okay. So any final remarks on anybody's part, or should we close on that? Diane, yes.
Just going to add on to the insulation. We thought that we were doing it to keep ourselves warmer in the winter. It was hard to tell about our gas use this winter because we had contractors here. But in the spring, when we had those howling winds, we had a lot of windstorms this spring, didn't feel anything in the house. You know, we used to have the whole house shaking. And then in the summer, didn't realize that the insulation keeps us cooler in the summer. It's really worth it. And insulation is definitely much easier to do when you're building new construction. That's why anything new that's being built in Brookline has got to be super well insulated and air sealed.
All right, fantastic. Excellent. Thanks to everybody. So I guess at this point, let's close out the meeting. Susan, as host, if you could keep it open for a few minutes, I want to check what has been said in the chat and get that before we lose.
So John, I'm going to make you host again.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So everybody, thank you for attending. We will see you, we may take, CAB may take the month of August off or maybe not, depends on how things go. Let's have a CAB planning meeting fairly soon to kind of talk about such things. If we don't have an August meeting, we'll resume again in September. Have a good rest of your summer and thanks for everybody to attend. Thanks to everybody for attending. Goodbye.
Buddy.
Bye.
Bye. All right. So, hey, Blake, maybe next time you can tell us about your system. You're muted. I can't hear you, but keep that in mind.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
If we're doing donations, who do we send the check to?
Oh, yeah. To
Susan?
no, to Jerry Churchill. And off the top of my head, I don't have the address, but I can get that for you.
And email it?
I'll email that address to you.
Yeah, great. Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks.
Good. Blake, thanks for attending.
Take care.
We'll see you next time.
Right.